Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you're joining us on this second of our live broadcasts taking place at the Glasgow Climate Change COP, COP26, when we're seeing a number of amazing presentations, discussion, some challenges, all coming to consider whether we are going to be able to address the significant challenge of climate change. And at the moment, as we heard last week, a number of pledges have been made on issues such as the deforestation pledge. Issues about climate finance are still very important as to whether or not there is going to be enough climate finance made available to meet the needs of the developing world, and the issues of climate justice are still very much to the fore. We also have heard last week that a number of leaders have made pledges for carbon neutrality, some by 2070 in the case of India, which still, as the third largest coal-using nation, can cause significant continued damage and increasing likelihood of global catastrophic climate change. We've seen this, that the IPCC report has indicated that even if all the Paris climate pledges are currently met, that we would still exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming by 2100, by the end of this century. So there's still a lot to be done, and a range of strong activists and strong voices need to be heard to ensure that there is strong action taken at this Glasgow COP. So I'm very pleased now to introduce our speaker, who is at the Glasgow COP, Julian Theseira, from the Malaysian Youth Delegation and also from the Climate Action Network of Southeast Asia. It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much, Julian, for taking the time. We know it's a very busy time, and especially on day 8. So can I ask you first if you could introduce yourself and the work you are doing and your organizations are doing on climate change?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'm Julian, and I'm one of the focal points for the Malaysian Youth Delegation this year. And MYD represents the Malaysian Youth at international climate negotiations and summits like the COP, and has been doing so since COP21 in Paris in 2015. And MYD is a member of the Climate Action Network Southeast Asia, and I serve on the board of the Climate Action Network Southeast Asia, which is part of the Global Climate Action Network, a network of over 1,500 climate organizations around the world. And I'm here at COP26 as part of the delegation of the Climate Action Network, as I co-coordinate the Climate Action Network Working Group on the global stocktake. And here at COP26, I've primarily been tracking negotiations on the global stocktake.
Thanks, Julian. So now, as I said, day 8, we had a feeling last week that there's still quite a sense of optimism. How is it now? I understand that there was a number of demonstrations over the weekend and challenges, and obviously excitement, temperatures are rising as we head towards the completion of the COP. So what's the feeling at the COP at the moment?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Matthew. So I would say the feelings are mixed, and I'm speaking from the perspective of civil society. I'm a civil society representative here at COP. I think feelings are mixed. I think on the one hand, like there's still sort of frustration among, for example, civil society representatives, because you're still having some access issues. And this is affecting our ability, for example, to observe the negotiations directly, to hold negotiators, to hold the countries accountable to their commitments, and to put pressure on them to step up their ambitions. And at the same time, I think there's positive energy. So like the marches on the climate marches on the weekend, for example, which probably all of you have seen on the news, were really energizing. Like it was great to see that such large mobilization. So many, and also it was I think a reminder for us civil society representatives here at COP as well, who we are representing and who we are speaking for, and where real power lies as well. Real power is with the people. and also there's some cautious optimism because regarding, for example, some of the announcements have been made at COP. So like India's announcement, for example, was a significant one. However, now we need to see those announcements actually translated into concrete like action plans and the details actually fleshed out, and also cautious optimism on things like, for example, loss and damage, where like it's really we've really been able to push it up the agenda and get it onto the radar at COP, and so we see more people talking about it than in the past, and it's appearing more in the media, and also for example decisions like for example Scotland's decision to commit like 1 million to specifically for loss and damage finance, that was really an important milestone moment, important signal in that like loss and damage issue is finally starting to be taken seriously. So there is like cautious guarded optimism that there is progress, or like also recognition that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, um, and 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 yes, to avert the climate crisis.
And I noticed your mask. You said that it's a particularly special mask for today.
Yes, so this mask, I'm wearing this mask both for public health and also reasons, and also to make a statement. So this mask is a mask calling for loss and damage finance. Today is Loss and Damage Day at COP, and within the Climate Action Network, we're coordinating actions and also like media actions and so on and so forth. And as part of this as well, like we've one of our member organizations in Costa Rica, they had produced these masks. These masks are actually made of bamboo. They were produced by women in Costa Rica, and the delegate from this organization, he brought this mask here to COP, and has distributed it to other Climate Action Network delegates and also other allies. And so we're wearing these masks today to show our support for the cause and to raise awareness of the cause of loss and damage, and also to really put pressure on negotiators and leaders to really step up on loss and damage, and to make clear that our demand for loss and damage finance.
So, and you said that there had been some success in actually raising that issue. Can you just sort of explain a little bit more about what that success was and how it went?
Yes. So I think in the past, from my knowledge and understanding, loss and damage was very much like more of a fringe, marginal issue, again, this is my first COP, so take certain things I say with a grain of salt. However, from what I see and hear, it's appearing a lot more in conversations. It's getting much more media attention, including like mainstream media attention. So, for example, journalists are reaching out to like people from the Climate Action Network to understand what loss and damage is. So because they're reporting on it, and also, as I mentioned, that decision from Scotland to dedicate 1 million specifically for loss and damage finance. It's really an important political signal, really, that the issue is it's in the political radar. It's leaders and decision makers are starting to take notice of it and recognize that it is something important that actually needs to be done on it, and so I think so. These are sort of indicators. I would say that there has been some success in pushing this issue.
And Julian, just in relation to that, and this gets to the some of the criticism from climate justice activists about the lack of access to activists and to civil societies compared to the overabundance of access for corporate sponsors. Is this something that is being addressed in the COP, or is it something that has just failed to be done, and that civil society is still trying to make their voices heard?
This is an ongoing battle, actually, at COP, even at COP26, even as we're speaking right now, and there are still excess, sorry, excess issues, and like civil society is, youth organizations, indigenous organizations are fighting hard for open and equitable access to COP to ensure that like our voices, the voices of our constituencies are heard, to ensure that we can be present to observe like the negotiations properly, and to be able to hold negotiators accountable, and also to support negotiators where necessary on issues, for example, like the inclusion of human rights in the overall Paris Agreement process.
And it does seem that those sort of issues, especially those issues that are often brought by youth activists, are not being addressed. They're certainly, not really being covered, I think, by the mainstream media. Is that just because there hasn't been as much access available, whether it's because of COVID or whether it's because the UK Secretariat has not really stepped up to the mark?
I think that the access issues do play a part, definitely. They do like impact like the ability of, for example, the youth constituency to be able to get its message across. At the same time, I on the other hand, I do think there has been success, for example, from youth at getting their voices heard, and I think you do see, for example, youth activists getting covered in high profile media like the Financial Times, and in a way more so, I would say, than in years past, and the recent like youth-led climate movements that like Fridays for Future and so on that have sprung up in recent years. I think they've really grown in traction and power, and I think they have been successful at conveying the message and views of youth, and also at getting media attention for it.
And of course, we know it's an ongoing process. So even when the COP finishes, there will be still a lot more work to keep doing. Can I just ask? We did see a number of world leaders that weren't in attendance. In particular, President Xi Jinping from China wasn't in attendance. There weren't any new announcements from China, although China had previously, I think, prior to the Kunming Biodiversity Conference, had made their announcement that they wish to move to carbon neutrality by 2050. I'm just wondering, do you think that because the Leaders' Day has finished, it came sort of early in the process, that lost a little bit of momentum, or has the issues and the announcements from the Leaders' Day carried through to the rest of the COP?
That's a really good question, actually. Certainly, the leaders' announcements and all were important for setting the tone at the beginning of the summit. So, however, I think in civil society spaces, for example, the discussion now is like translating, getting those announcements, those nice pledges and announcements, so on, translated to actual like commitments, and fleshing out the details of them. And ensuring that these announcements and so on are reflected in various ways, in various texts and so on, so that they can actually that countries can actually be held accountable for what they are announcing to do. And so there's now like a lot of work that needs to be done to flesh out the details of these high level announcements, and also to connect these high level announcements from high level leaders to what's actually going on in the negotiating rooms, for example. And there has been some, like, from like a civil society perspective, some amount of disconnect between what was going on being announced at the higher levels, and what's going on in the negotiating rooms. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to ensure like like to bridge this gap and to ensure that like the outcomes of negotiations are actually like ambitious and substantive.
And so I guess in some ways, yes, having those leaders' pledges at the beginning means that now people can actually focus on how to implement it. I mean, the deforestation pledge has potential, of course, to be extraordinarily valuable, not only in terms of protecting carbon sinks, but also in terms of just protecting biodiversity and promoting adaptation. I guess also that's one of the things, is there a focus on that adaptation, or is it still on mitigation? I mean, coal still seems to be king at the COP, and as is gas, as it was reported that the Australian Prime Minister was actually in the pavilion and led a talk where Santos, one of the major gas producers in the world, was sponsoring it. So it still seems that coal and gas and the fossil fuels are still reigning supreme. I'm just wondering, is there likely to be anything that moves forward over the next week that tries to move away and mitigate that loving of fossil fuels?
Yeah. Thanks, Matthew, for bringing up those like sobering realities. On coal, there has been some like momentum because there was that announcement about the phase out of coal. And again, as mentioned, with like all the announcements, the details need to be actually fleshed out, and the substance of it has to be worked out as well. And certainly we like on the civil society side, we're working hard to on the agenda of the phase out of fossil fuels. We were pushing hard to get try to get it reflected in the final decisions text at COP, that there's some reference to phasing out of fossil fuels. It's a big fight, of course, and certainly there are powerful established interests that would strongly resist any sort of tax around like phasing out of fossil fuels, and we more or less know who these actors are and who these established interests are. So so definitely like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Still a lot of big battles to fight. On the mitigation, like adaptation front, yes, certainly, like I think mitigation is high on the agenda. Partly because as well of the realities of that in order to avert like a catastrophic climate change that might make like the planet more or less unlivable for human civilization, then we do need like strong and ambitious mitigation. However, adaptation has definitely moved up the agenda as well. Like it's on a lot more people's minds. It's talked about a lot more prominently. Part of that is also just the recognition that the adaptation is not just a developing country issue. We've seen like that climate impacts affect like the whole world, even wealthy advanced countries like the USA, Germany, and so like countries all around the world need to build resilience to climate change. So definitely, so because of that, like there like adaptations become more important on the climate agenda, and also like there's push as well like on to come up with like a global goal on adaptation, for instance. Because like for example for mitigation, we have like a clear sort of north star sort of to aim towards like this 1.5 degrees Celsius target. Now we need to have something like that for adaptation. So that's something that like on civil society side, so we're working hard to push for.
And in terms of the work that you're doing on loss and damage, I think that's also something that we've seen certainly the fossil fuel companies respond to when they're going to be held liable for the continuing, their efforts to continuing to destroy the planet. So that might also be another exciting way. If that's moving up the agenda, that will force fossil fuel companies to realise that they will be held liable for their criminal actions in destroying the planet. So I wish you well on that, on pushing that up the agenda. Can I then just sort of, in terms of conclusion, again, thank you very much for spending the time with us and our audience today. The Secretary General of the United Nations recently declared this moment and this year as a code red for humanity. And I mentioned before in the introduction, the IPCC has noted the major problems with existing pledges to reduce emissions. Given that we've got a number of days left to go in this very important Glasgow COP, do you think that there is going to be enough action at Glasgow? Have we seen, or is there moving towards statements and pledges and actions that will come out of Glasgow that will be enough, or what we need, at least for the moment?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So what I would say is that from what I've seen so far, seen and heard so far at Glasgow, I think coming out of it, we will have taken some steps in the right direction. Already some of the announcements that have been mentioned on this call, like the announcement from India, for example, are some important steps in the right direction. However, I don't, at least from where things stand right now, I don't think the final outcomes will nearly be enough for what the planet, what humanity really needs actually to avert catastrophic climate change, and also to ensure climate justice for the most vulnerable, the most marginalized.
Well, thank you for those sobering things. And so, Julian, can I say good luck? Keep fighting. Thank you again for your time. Good luck to the Malaysian youth delegation and the Climate Action Network from Southeast Asia. Can I thank you very, very much for your time, and looking forward to hopefully catching up with you when you get back from Malaysia.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So we now move towards an interview that we've done a few days ago from Tuyen from Vietnam. And this was pre-recorded, so I hope you find the next interview as interesting as we found the last with Julian. And again, Julian, thank you very much indeed for the interview and also for the work, and good luck for the next few days to COP. So please stay tuned and we'll listen to Tuyen talk about some of the issues about climate change and how they affect Vietnam. Again, with our focus on COP26 in Glasgow and climate justice. So today we are joined by Tuyen. Welcome. Can you please introduce yourself and the work you are doing on climate change?
Yeah. Hi, Matthew. Hi, everyone. My name is Tuyen. I'm from Vietnam, and I'm work for Tuyen newspaper. My newspaper in one of the most popular newspaper in Vietnam, and we publish around 300,000 copy daily. And now I'm working in the Mekong Delta. And the Mekong Delta in the downstream of the Mekong River, and this is this also is one of the most vulnerable climate area in the world. So I mainly focus on environmental issues like climate change, soil water intrusion, and the human impact on environment, like sand mining and hydropower in the on the Mekong River.
Thank you very much. And we're here, although we're discussing COP26, you were in the COP23 in Bonn in 2017, and that conference of parties was presided over by the Prime Minister of Fiji, Frank Bainimarama. And that was the first time that a small island developing state, assumed the presidency of the negotiations just after the Paris Agreement in 2015. It was also a time when the United States, under President Trump, had announced it would withdraw from the Paris Agreement. So I guess I wanted to ask you, what was that COP23 experience in Bonn like in 2017?
Yeah. In 2017, I was one of 14 journalists who came Bonn, Germany to cover COP23 in the fellowship of ECN and Introduce. And it was a great experience for me. Before joining the COP, I just look at the problem of climate change in my country, but not really at the rest of the world. So, and then the conference had me broaden my point of view on global climate change. And after conference, I focused more on article on environment, climate change, and the sustainable development policy. And at COP23, I wrote about anti-coal power and reduce carbonic and global climate change and activities of Vietnam at the conference. And I learned a lot from other journalists, and now we still keep in touch, and sometimes we share together story, new picture in other countries.
So then moving now to the Glasgow COP, which is starting. Now we are 5 years after Bonn and 7 years after the Paris Agreement. What do you think we can expect from this meeting in Glasgow the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I hope countries will follow what were agreed at the Paris Agreement. And I especially hope that countries will continue to have a renewable energy development policy, including Vietnam. And hydropower is the threat to the Mekong Delta, and I am looking forward to the renewable energy, the solution to reduce hydropower, especially in the Mekong Basin. And I also hope that developed country will continue to have programs and finance to support developing countries like Vietnam to respond to climate change.
And so, in terms of impacts of climate change, maybe we could turn to the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. And I wonder if you could tell us some of these impacts and what the impacts of climate change means to the communities in the Mekong Delta.
Yeah, the Mekong Delta region is the largest agricultural production in Vietnam, including rice, fruit, and aquaculture. Every year Vietnam exports around more than 6 million tons of rice. And the Mekong Delta contributes 90%. And the Mekong Delta also contributes 70% of fruit and 60% of aquaculture. So you can see the Mekong Delta is a very important area in Vietnam. But the Mekong Delta is, as I said, Mekong Delta is one of the most vulnerable climate area in the world. Now, so many problems with this area. I think there are two main issues to Mekong Delta. First, the hydropower in upper of Mekong River has changed the flows and reduce sediment and fish. And the second is climate change, such as seawater level rise, causing flooding and saltwater intrusion. And to adapt this situation, the government of Vietnam have issued Resolution 120 on sustainable development for the Mekong Delta region. According this resolution, the Mekong Delta will not try to produce a lot of rice. Instead, trying to improve the rice quality and export value. In the past, the Mekong Delta farmer usually produce 3 rice crops per year, including 1 rice crop in the drought season. And the later rice crop, if there is enough rain or water and no salinity intrusion, give a high production. However, climate change and the flow of the Mekong River has changed, and the rice crop in the drought season often fell, and the farmer lose a lot of money. I remember in 2015 and 2016, the almost all rice area died because lack of water and soil intrusion, and the farmer lose total around $340 million. That's why the resolution 120 of the government offered a solution to reduce rice production and increase export value, and focus developing aquatic products and fruits because it's a higher economic value. And after the resolution 120, more climate change prevention programs have also been developed for the Mekong Delta.
Thank you, Tuyen. And I mean, it's interesting to read that, or to hear about the actions that the Vietnam government are taking on trying to respond to the issues of climate change in the Mekong Delta. I also know that the government has passed their new environmental protection law that includes various chapters on climate change and environmental assessment. And I guess the transition away from fossil fuels like coal and gas is very important, not just for air quality, but also for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I'm wondering if you could just update us on this renewable energy push in Vietnam to respond to climate change and the energy transition in Vietnam.
Yeah, of course. Vietnam is a country affected by climate change, and Vietnam need to actually find a way to adapt alongside support from other countries. And I think one of the most important ways is development of renewable energy. And after COP23, there was many good policies on the purchase price of electricity from investor and households installing rooftop solar power. And especially in the September of 2019, the solar power project built at Tuyen Lake with a capacity around 500 megawatt was complete and put into the operation. This project is the largest solar power project in the Southeast Asia. And I think this project not only bring economic benefit. This project shows that solar power will bring great contribution to Vietnam instead of just focusing developing coal power and hydropower.
So thank you. And look, Tuyen, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us today. I think it's very exciting to hear what's happening in Vietnam, both from the declarations from the Vietnam government in terms of responding to climate change, and indeed hearing about the challenges for transition from energy sources from coal and gas into renewables. And thank you also for sharing your experience with us about COP23. And we certainly hope we might be able to catch up with you after the conclusion of the Glasgow COP to see whether or not our expectations have been met. So Thank you very much indeed, Tuyen, for sharing your experience with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Yeah, I'm very happy to join the World Cup to share the situation of on climate change in my area and my experience at COP26. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaman. Thank you. And thank you. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Lee Dinh Tuyen, some of the issues that Vietnam is facing with respect to climate change in the Mekong Delta. And thank you also to Julian Theseira for his interview live from the Climate Convention in Glasgow. We'd also like to thank supporters, Heinrich Böll Stiftung and the Asian Development Bank, the Environmental Law Program, for supporting us to ensure that we can bring you Seeds of Justice every week. And again, every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Manila, 5 p.m. Bangkok, we'll bring you interesting news, stories, and information about environmental law issues. On the 16th of November, we are going to have a forum with Heinrich Böll Stiftung Southeast Asia Office on climate justice. And on the 23rd of November, we'll be following up with climate litigation cases from around the region, especially with a focus on Asia. So November is our climate month, and we certainly would invite you to come to our webinars and our Seeds of Justice on the 16th of November and the 23rd of November. And then the last week of November, we will have an exploration of environmental human rights defenders in Southeast Asia. It's been a great pleasure having you with us tonight. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Seeds of Justice. Good night.